sometimes there's a scientism as opposed to actual science. I'll go into another philosophic story, which I wanted to share with you guys. One of my favorite books is Gulliver's Travels. I don't know if you've seen the movie or read the book.
I think I've seen the movie.
So the movie, it's with Jack Black, if you saw there was a movie.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is it's actually a philosophic, satirical critique of both the ancients and the moderns. So there's one story which I love, and it's about, and it's really relevant for our day and age. He's traveling, so Gulliver. So Jonathan Swift was a philosophic satirist that wrote about 300 years ago. And he was profoundly critical of some of the modern philosophic ideas of certainty, which started to come out with the science and modern science and this kind of stuff. And we're surrounded by that because fundamentally, there's so much information out there that wading through it is one of the hardest things there is. So how do you know what's true? How do you know what's not true? You can throw up your hands and give up, or you can say, well, this is my guy. I believe this scientist, or I believe that scientist, or my scientist says something different than the other scientist. So Gulliver's going through these travels, and people sort of remember that he's a giant, and there's the little people of Lilliput and this kind of a thing. If they kind of remember, there was a cartoon when we were all kids. So anyway, he continues his travels, and he finds this weird island called Laputa. And Laputa is this disc-like island that actually hovers, and it flies. There we go. So this is Gulliver.
Continue.
So anyway, so the island is this weird sort of flying saucer type disc that just flies over everywhere. And the Laputans, he makes fun of them. They're pretty much scientists, and they have this weird eye. One eye is a microscope and one eye is a telescope, but they can't see in front of them. And they're mathematical, and they're obsessed with mathematics and music, but theoretical music. Mm-hmm. And everything is theoretical, but anything that's practical, they're like, no, it doesn't fit our theories. So one example, they can't speak his language, he can't speak their language. They bring him up onto this island, and he's trying to understand them. And the king, they can't see in front of them, and they're always obsessed with their mathematical theories. And they have a servant that flaps, they're called flappers, that flap their eyes or their ears or their mouths so that they talk to each other because they're always so obsessed with these various theories. Mm-hmm. They're constantly contemplating, kind of like the joke about Socrates that I said earlier. And he speaks to them and they don't understand him, but he tries to figure out their language. And what they do is they get a tailor to give him clothes because his clothes are ruined. And the tailor comes to him and he does quadrants of the earth, and he does all these calculations, but the clothes don't fit because the person that was doing it made a mistake in the calculation. But they didn't change the clothes because the calculations, according to them, were the correct calculations. The joke is that the theory had to be the theory, and it couldn't be that there was human error. Mm-hmm. So they continue, and the story ends with the Laputans where he makes fun of them. He talks about their women, and it's kind of like he's an adventurer and explorer. And the women are normal. They're not like the scientists, Laputans, and they don't like their husbands because their husbands are constantly contemplating all these things. So the women go down below to other normal people and are always running off with the gardener or like the footman or whatever because their husbands can't take care of them, even though they like them. So they're constantly, they can't conceive of like normal relationships with their wives. They want it. So the story goes that one of them is beaten by a footman. She's the prime minister's wife, but the prime minister's doing these calculations. He just can't satisfy her desires.
Yeah.
So this is 300 years ago, and it's very funny, but the idea is that sometimes there's a scientism as opposed to actual science, which is much more humble, which says, listen, we have a theory. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Let's try. I mean, the one is we talk about calories, or we talk about how do people put on muscle? Well, we all know we're all meatheads. If you lift weights, we put on muscle.
Power Project family, how's it going? Now on this podcast, Mark, Andrew, and I, we talk about fasting a lot. We talk about the ketogenic diet and a lot of different types of diets, but Bubs Naturals has a product. They have the collagen protein, which is amazing. They have these apple cider vinegar gummies, which are like crack, but they have
they have these
MCT oil powder packets that I've never used to do this, but in the morning I'll wake up and I'll put it in coffee, and the smoothness, number one, in terms of the mixing is amazing, but the consistency of my energy through the day because of the MCT oil powder is peak. Andrew, how's your experience with it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's like the best way to start the day. You're satiated, you're energized, and you're just ready to crush the day. So if you guys want to get in on this MCT oil powder, head over to bubsnaturals.com, and at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save 20% off your entire order. Again, Bubs Naturals, promo code Power Project to save 20% off. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Okay, but is it mTOR signaling or is it the small micro tears? Like, I don't know. Which theory is that theory is the Greek word theoria, which is to see.
Yeah.
So if you see it and it sticks, great. But if it doesn't stick, okay, next theory.
And if you got a microscope and a telescope, the person that's blind might see the best. Right?
Exactly.
Because they might just feel their way around and get to the right thing, right?
Exactly. So I think the thing is that we do things, we try things, and it could be right. Like, was Charles Poliquin right on every percentage that he said? It's
I think so. No.
Yeah, I think But was it 117% that the dip was versus your 1RM bench, or was it 116? And if you're not, but I use those numbers. We use those numbers. Ben and I use those numbers.
It was wild to go to a seminar and have someone they got their hand up, and he'd be like, "Yes," and someone would be like, I got confused. How many seconds of a pause was it on the front squat? And Charles would just be like,
3.64. And the person's like, yeah, it's 3.64. It's like, no, I mean, there's rules and there's recipes. So I guess the thing is,
fuck with people. But his point was like, you got caught up on the wrong thing. I know that I prescribe a tempo, but it's just for me to be able to coach you. That's all it's
exactly. I mean, the example was, I remember at a seminar, someone asked, he said, it's good to have two different heights of slant board. And Ben, Patrick, and I love slant boards. And Charles was, it's great. It's great for, to help with dorsiflexion and, to alleviate that and allow your knees to go further forward and more quad dominance. Use them all the time. Someone said, what angle, what exact degree of slant board? And he says 46.37 on the one and 32.6. And the person was writing it down. It's like, no, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Like, have two different ones. I don't know. But people really like that precision because in some ways, here's a cookie cutter way of coaching people. But for me, I always like figuring out each athlete.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. The magic is figuring out each athlete. I mean, and when you get bored of people, then stop coaching. But I think that's the cool thing is that Mark was coaching a guy that was in here that was doing
Oscar.
And it's great. Oscar's great. Like, he was doing ART in him, and for his troubles, Mark coached him and whooped his ass. No, but the point is, you can see that Mark still loves coaching people because he wants to help people. He wants people to get better. He wants them to move better and have a great workout. And I think that's the magic of coaching. I think we all have to remember, and Charles taught me this, we're in the minority, people that actually love moving, like that we're trying to improve our bodies. And I think that's the thing that coaches should remember, that most people really see their bodies as their enemy. And if we can help them not see their body as their enemy, I think that's God's work. And I think, that's the sort of unification of what all of the quote unquote fitness industry should be doing, which is to try to help people not look at their bodies as their enemy and try to help people. And again, do I think the recipe that I use with, I'm called the ATG Coach with ATG and as an interpretation of Charles Poliquin, and, and Ben and Keegan and I have sort of discussed this, and, they're great guys and great coaches, and it's a recipe. Like, fundamentally, it's a recipe. And do we think it's a great recipe? Absolutely. I've gotten great results with people, pain-free, performance, all that kind of stuff. Do I think it's the only recipe? No, but do I think people should use different recipes to actually try to be better and move better? Absolutely. And I think fundamentally people are happier when they do that. So that's, I don't know, that's my spiel on that one. But
so Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.